Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be hanging out with you today because we're going to explore what's often called the invisible art of storytelling. Yep, we're talking about audio. It's that secret ingredient, the magical element that literally makes us jump out of our seats or tear up during a dramatic moment or just feel completely immersed in a totally different world. So today, we're going to demystify audio post-production and break down exactly how professionals use sound to captivate us. Let's get into it.
I want you to start by trying a little experiment in your head for a second. Imagine you're watching your all-time favorite movie, and you just close your eyes. Even without seeing the screen at all, you can usually instantly understand exactly where you are, who's speaking, and exactly how the scene feels, right? The audio paints a vivid picture all on its own. But now imagine muting that same movie and just watching the visuals. Suddenly, it feels kind of empty. It loses so much of its emotion and its overall impact. That contrast right there, that proves how audio is truly the engine driving the emotional impact of any scene.
Okay, let's dive into this, because our core thesis for today's explainer is actually pretty simple. The audience should notice the story, not the audio problems. When sound design is done perfectly, it feels completely natural. It's practically invisible. You see, sound in post-production isn't just about making things louder or adding cool noises. It's fundamentally about emotion, serving the narrative, and making sure absolutely nothing distracts you from the story unfolding in front of you.
Which brings us to Section 1, the breakdown, the 4 elements of film sound. So, how exactly do the pros build this invisible layer of emotion? Well, think of a professional sound mix kind of like a pie, divided up into 4 distinct slices: dialogue, music, sound effects, and ambience. These 4 foundational elements all have to share the exact same sonic space. They've got to live together harmoniously to create a complete, immersive listening experience. Because if one slice takes up way too much room, it just crushes the others. Let's look at each of these slices individually to really understand their role in the mix. First up, and yeah, usually the most critical slice, is dialogue. These are the voices of your characters. Dialogue carries the crucial information, the emotion, the personality, and the relationships of the story. And because the story basically lives in the voices in almost every single scene, dialogue needs to be the absolute clearest sound the audience hears. If your viewers are straining to understand what characters are saying, like if they're having to turn on the subtitles just to keep up, they're going to lose interest and check right out of the story. Next up, we have music. If dialogue carries the info, music is the element that guides and shapes the emotion. It tells the audience exactly how a moment is supposed to feel. Think about it. You could take the exact same visual of a person walking down a street, and if you play a bouncy, joyful pop song, it feels like a romantic comedy. But if you play a slow, dark cello string, suddenly it feels frightening or heartbreaking. But a quick word of caution for anyone building a mix. As powerful as music is, it should never, ever overpower the dialogue.
Moving on to our third slice, sound effects, or SFX. These are the individual sounds added to enhance specific actions on screen. We're talking about footsteps, a door slamming, a phone ringing, or the sharp crash of glass breaking. Now here's what's really interesting. Most people just assume the camera magically records all these sounds perfectly on set, but in reality, many of these everyday action sounds are heavily enhanced or even entirely recreated from scratch during post-production, just to make sure they sound punchy and realistic.
And finally, our 4th slice is ambience. This is the natural background sound of a location. Think of the subtle chirp of birds in a forest, the low hum of traffic in a city, or the soft chatter of people in a busy cafe. Ambience is basically the sonic glue of a scene. It creates the realism of the environment, and crucially, it prevents scenes from feeling unnaturally and uncomfortably silent. Without ambience, a scene feels like it was literally shot inside a vacuum.
All right, let's move to Section 2, the reconstruction, organizing and mixing tracks.
Now that we know our 4 ingredients, how do we actually bake the pie? Let's move over to the timeline and see how this builds. Professional editors will actually physically separate these 4 sounds into different, often color-coded tracks. For instance, they'll put all the dialogue strictly on track 1, lay the ambience down on track 2, drop the sound effects onto track 3, and place the music on track 4. By keeping these elements super organized on distinct timeline tracks, the whole process of editing, tweaking, and mixing them together becomes infinitely easier and way more efficient.
So the crucial point here is that once they're all on the timeline, every single one of those sounds is competing for your attention. Achieving a great audio mix isn't just about cranking the volume and making everything louder, it is entirely about balance. Editors use this mental checklist. Can I clearly hear the dialogue? Is the music supporting the scene rather than fighting it? Are the sound effects actually realistic? And does the ambience feel natural? Really, balance is everything. Which leads us to Section 3, the climax, the library demonstration and beginner mistakes.
To really hammer this home, let's look at a practical application straight from our source material. Picture a simple scene where a student enters a library. In version A, we just have the raw video, absolutely zero sound. As you can guess, the scene feels completely empty and lifeless. But then in version B, we take that exact same video and layer in our 4 elements: crystal clear dialogue, the soft sound effect of footsteps, the quiet, hushed ambience of a library, and some gentle background music. The stark contrast here is wild. The images didn't change for a single second between version A and version B, yet you experience the scene completely differently. It suddenly feels alive and entirely believable, 100% thanks to the audio. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between an amateur approach and a true professional one. When beginners start mixing, they tend to fall into the exact same common traps. They make the music way louder than the dialogue, they completely forget to include ambient room tone so it sounds super unnatural, and they just add way too many distracting sound effects. But a professional mix? That showcases that perfect harmony we've been talking about all along. Clear dialogue, beautifully balanced music that actually supports the mood, and natural ambience that grounds you right in reality.
Wrapping things up, we arrive at Section 4, the resolution. Sound is half the picture.
Let's pull all of these concepts together into one really critical professional insight for you to take away from this explainer: 50%. Ask any professional editor and they'll tell you they often spend nearly as much time working on the sound design as they do cutting the actual visuals. And why is that? Because a beautifully filmed, incredibly expensive scene will lose absolutely all of its emotional impact if the audio is garbage. But on the flip side, a very simple, maybe even cheaply filmed image combined with excellent, thoughtful sound design, that can feel incredibly rich, immersive, and emotionally powerful. Sound really truly is 50% of the viewing experience.
So, I want to leave you guys with a provocative thought to chew on. Now that you understand the careful construction of dialogue, the emotional pull of music, the realism of sound effects, and the grounding nature of ambience, next time you sit down to watch a movie or a show, will you just be watching it, or will you truly be listening? Challenge yourself to pick out those 4 elements and appreciate the invisible art happening right in your ears. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep listening closely.